Hello there, potential psilocybin peer supporter. My name is Dr. Sada Oleman, and I'm the founder of Silo Health and a pharmacist by trade. I'm grateful you're here today, and I'm excited to share about psilocybin utilization. I'm going to do my best to tie in this unit's information to be inclusive to clinical, ceremonial, and community-based settings. In this unit, we will do the following. We will navigate psilocybin nuances. I'll provide an overview of dosing. I'll share about product formulations, discuss dose day considerations, and wrap up with side effect management. So let's dive in. As a brief recap of Manesh's unit, psilocybin is a prodrug, meaning that it is not active. It needs to be broken down into psilocin, the psychoactive metabolite, to exhibit its psychedelic effects through the activation of the serotonin 2A receptor. It's important to understand psilocybin versus psilocybin mushrooms. Psilocybin here is a single molecule, whereas psilocybin mushrooms contain much more than just psilocybin. These mushrooms contain psilocybin, psilocin, baeocystin, norbaeocystin, norpsilocin, and aerogenicin. Researchers believe that there may be value in all of these molecules as they work in concert with each other, and that a lot of the potential therapeutic effect is associated with a full mushroom fruiting body. This idea of multiple mushroom compounds acting synergistically with each other to modulate a positive experience is also known as the entourage effect, or the concerto effect to some. As Dr. Jahan has mentioned previously, these mushroom organisms have been utilized for millennia throughout indigenous ceremonial contexts and potentially over the course of human evolution. Let's discuss now synthetic and mushroom psilocybin. In order to keep ourselves objective, it's important to note that the hallmark clinical trials do utilize pure, isolated synthetic psilocybin with their trial participants. They do not utilize psilocybin mushrooms. Some communities believe that the spirit of the mushroom is lost in this process of synthetic psilocybin. With that said, there are reports that claim curandera Maria Sabina felt the same spirit of psilocybin upon ingesting the synthetic version of it. There aren't any clinical trials that utilize psilocybin mushrooms yet. So with that said, please remember that the research indicates the tremendous therapeutic potential for indications like depression and anxiety using synthetic psilocybin, and that these clinical trial participants have occasioned a mystical-like experience. So we've touched upon some of the nuances between psilocybin and psilocin, as well as natural psilocybin mushrooms and synthetic psilocybin. Now, let's begin applying our understanding of these differences to what psilocybin dosing looks like. There are psilocybin mushrooms and cGMP psilocybin. Let's begin with cGMP dosing. cGMP stands for Current Good Manufacturing Practices. These are the practices required by the FDA to ensure proper design, monitoring, and control of manufacturing processes and facilities for whatever active pharmaceutical compound an organization is synthesizing. In this case, we're talking about synthetic psilocybin dosing. Some trials use weight-based dosing, generally 20 or 30 milligrams per 70 kilograms body weight. 70 kilograms is 154 pounds. Other trials use fixed doses of 10 or 25 milligrams of psilocybin. So what makes the most sense here? To use fixed dosing recommendations or weight-based dosing? Well, one study has actually looked into this very question and concluded that fixed dosing is the most effective and reliable way to achieve positive outcomes associated with a mystical-like experience. For those that don't know, the mystical-like experience has been correlated for longer, sustained positive health outcomes. This study claims that there is no evidence indicating that body weight affects the subjective effects of psilocybin, and that a fixed 25 milligram dose of psilocybin would be just as effective as any weight-based protocol. Another study also looked into this idea and determined that the convenience and lower cost of administering psilocybin as a fixed dose outweighs any potential advantage of weight-adjusted dosing. In addition to disregarding body weight, another research paper expresses that the effect of psilocybin are not moderated by biological sex either. What could be taken into account is age. Age is a major predictor of the psilocybin response. A group of researchers claim that older subjects reported less impaired control and cognition and tend to experience more blissful states than younger subjects. They hypothesize that this could be due to older participants having more experience in managing negative emotions, and or the fact that serotonin two-way receptor density decreases as one ages. I dislike the idea of a one-size-fits-all approach to medicine. However, fixed dosing seems to be the way to go in psilocybin utilization. This may change with more research and innovation. Until then, the limited research we have suggests that fixed dosing is the most effective method for reliably inducing a threshold-breaking experience with mystical-like qualities. So how does the research on synthetic psilocybin translate to psilocybin mushrooms? Let's get into some conceptual dosing information for both cGMP psilocybin and psilocybin-containing mushrooms. Also, as I speak about the mushroom, I will be referring to Psilocybe cubensis, the most commonly cultivated psilocybin-containing mushroom found naturally around the world. Dried psilocybin mushrooms contain about 0.5 to 1% psilocybin in it. It's important to note that psilocin can also be found in these fruiting bodies. Psilocybin levels in any one species of mushroom are highly variable, varying by a factor of 2 to more than a factor of 6. One study found that combined psilocybin and psilocin in dried mushrooms are highly variable and range from 1% of the mushroom's weight to potentially up to 19% of the mushroom's weight. The psilocin content has been correlated to its mushroom flush number. A flush refers to a crop of mushrooms when cultivating and harvesting. The intensity of mushroom bluing as a predictor of psilocybin or psilocin levels has also been debunked, and there is no correlation there. Moreover, psilocybin and psilocin are generally well dispersed throughout the entire mushroom, though there are some instances where mushroom caps were more potent than their stems. All of this is to say that there is a lot of variability with psilocybin mushroom dosing. With this variability, as a peer supporter, one would like to have a good sense as to how much psilocybin a peer has consumed. This is easy to do with pharmaceutical-grade psilocybin products. Unfortunately, again, mushroom dosing is not fully understood and highly variable. With that, I hope to contribute some sense to this highly nuanced discussion. I will do this by explaining how to estimate the conversion between synthetic and mushroom psilocybin, as well as by providing a dosage overview. So here's how we estimate the conversion between synthetic and mushroom psilocybin. I found a study and took the average of their 3 psilocybin cubensis cultures and their 5 to 6 flushes with psilocybin concentration per dry weight. I calculated the average of the 15 different flushes in mini cultures, which came to a concentration of roughly 6.3 milligrams of psilocybin per 1 gram of dried weight. With that number, if participants are being dosed with 25 milligrams of pure psilocybin, then it is fair to say that they may be consuming the equivalent amount to roughly 4 grams of dried mushrooms. Remember that some trials use weight-based dosing at 25 milligrams of psilocybin per 70 kilograms of body weight. So if a participant of this trial is 200 pounds, then they would be administered 32.5 milligrams of psilocybin, which would roughly be a little over 5 grams of dried mushrooms. This math is highly theoretical and is just an attempt to simplify the conversion between cGMP psilocybin and psilocybin mushrooms. Now I'll provide a dosing overview of psilocybin mushrooms. The following chart refers to dried and ground Psilocybe cubensis mushrooms. First, we have a microdose, which ranges between 100 to 300 milligrams or 0.1 to 0.3 grams. A microdose is a dose that is subperceptual, generally to improve mood, focus, and creativity. Subperceptual can translate to a subconscious awareness of a sensation, so it is highly subjective in its nature. With that said, there is growing literature suggesting some potential therapeutic effectiveness and a large online community sharing anecdotal reports of the success surrounding microdosing. We need more research to come to more definitive conclusions. There are 2 main dosing protocols with microdosing, one being the Fadiman protocol, the other being the Stamets protocol. Fadiman is 1 day on and 2 days off. Stamets is 4 days on and 3 days off. Over time, microdosers tend to decrease the frequency of their dose days, and their own practice of microdosing comes into play. There are potential risks associated with microdosing, and I will get into that a little bit later in this unit. Next on the chart is a threshold dose. This can be between 300 to 750 milligrams or 0.3 to 0.75 grams. This is a dose range where one begins perceiving the effects of psilocybin on an energetic and emotional level. There should be little to no visual distortion, and the ability and desire to socialize may be enhanced at this dose range. After the threshold dose, we enter into the range of a concert or museum dose. I've also heard this dose range termed as a pica dose. This realm ranges between 0.75 to 1.5 grams. This is a dose where deep introspection, visual motifs, and a sense of interconnectedness may occur with lesser risk of ego dissolution or loss of physical coordination. The sense of self is generally still intact, though malleable. Colors may become much more saturated, and philosophical insight may occur. Divergent and creative thought processing may occur here too. 2 to 3 grams is a standard psilocybin journeying dose. The effects of the museum or concert dose may happen here with the increased potential for ego dissolution and a loss of sense of self. Interconnectedness with all and a sense of oceanic boundlessness may also be present. Tracking time may become more difficult, and there will be much stronger visual effects at this dose range. A high dose is 3.5 to 4.5 grams. This, depending on one's physiology and medical history, is highly dependable in achieving a mystical-like experience with deep psychological and philosophical insights. This dose range may be exceptionally challenging or enlightening. Peers may more reliably experience ego dissolution at this high dose range too. Contradictory feelings and insights can happen here. Synesthesia and ever-changing geometry may also be experienced here too. Our chart currently maxes out at 5 grams, being what many call a heroic dose, coined by Terence McKenna. As a friendly reminder, no one needs to be a hero. The heroic dose is a dose where peers may encounter and re-identify with past traumas, other conscious entities, the presence of a universal and timeless knowledge. Deeply significant insights may be gathered in this state too. Emotions are increasingly fragile. Your peer's sense of self may have disintegrated, and time may feel like a weird conundrum. Themes of duality and non-duality may be present as well here too. A greater sense of oceanic boundlessness, merging with the universe, and removal from the physical plane and reality may occur in this dose range as well. Please note that dosing is very unique to the individual, depending on one's genetics, medical history, psyche, physiology, and past experience. The effects may not be well predicted, and these descriptions I shared are highly subjective. Additionally, this chart is not all-encompassing. In clinical trials, participants begin with a threshold dose of psilocybin and then receive a high dose a week or so later. In psychiatric care, the philosophy of start low and go slow may be applicable to your peer to determine the right dosage for them. Please, as a peer supporter, do not recommend any dosage range for your peer. Again, this information is for risk reduction and information and educational purposes only. When we speak about dosing drugs, the term overdose might come to mind. With mushrooms, it's not realistically possible to overdose, but when the FDA begins approving the regulation of these synthetic products, it is much more possible. Let me explain. So a hypothesized lethal dose for a human has been extrapolated from mice studies to be 6 grams or 6,000 milligrams of pure psilocybin. To put that into context, a heroic dose of 5 grams of dried mushrooms would, in theory, be 31.5 milligrams of psilocybin, meaning the lethal dose of psilocybin is 190 times the amount of a heroic dose. This equates to about 950 grams or 2 full pounds of dried mushrooms. If you take the 0.5 to 1% of psilocybin in dried mushroom calculation, one will gather a range of 600 to 1,200 grams of dried mushrooms for a potential overdose. So when it comes to a lethal dose, it's not realistic to overdose on mushrooms. Please note again that these are highly theoretical calculations and we do need more research on this topic. So we just covered a psilocybin dosing overview and its considerations. Now we're going to get into dosage formulations for both psilocybin mushroom products and synthetic products. I'll begin with discussing selected mushroom formulations, and then we'll discuss conceptual synthetic formulations. It's important we understand how these formulations work in order to promote risk reduction and promote our peers' safety. First, we have fresh psilocybin mushrooms. Fresh mushrooms are generally good for only a few days, and then they start to go bad. Consuming spoiled mushrooms with mold on them can have serious health consequences. If they are not eaten fresh, then consider storing them appropriately. Do not freeze fresh mushrooms. Instead, dry them as soon as possible or consume them within a few days post-harvest, assuming it's allowable by law. Next, we have dried mushrooms. Dried mushrooms are generally 1/10 of the weight of fresh mushrooms. These are the most commonly sourced mushroom products. Both fresh and dried mushrooms can cause nausea or vomiting. Ways to mitigate the nausea and vomiting include consuming 500 milligrams of powdered ginger an hour before the mushrooms are consumed, brewing a mushroom tea, lemon taking the mushroom, and or fasting for 6 to 8 hours before mushroom ingestion. In terms of storage, to preserve dried mushrooms, keep them sealed in an airtight bag or container. Dried mushrooms are freezer friendly as long as they're fully dried. Bonus points if you use desiccants in your storage process. Next, we have truffles. Truffles are compact masses of underground mycelium that contain both psilocybin and psilocin. This has much less moisture relative to the above ground fruiting body. Due to variability again, it may take roughly 4 to 6 times the amount of truffles in weight to be equivalent to the amount of dried mushrooms in weight. Another way to ingest psilocybin is through a mushroom tea. Many believe that this can relieve the nausea caused by the mushroom's chitin breakdown. Chitin is the protective starch-like material found in the mushroom cell wall. We humans lack an enzyme to break down chitin naturally. Fortunately, for those sensitive to chitin, it can be broken down through the tea making process. Additionally, because psilocybin is water soluble, a hot water extraction, or making a tea, will strip the psilocybin and psilocin out of the mushrooms and into the brew for consumption. There are a variety of different approaches to brewing a mushroom tea, and many of these approaches can be found online. Another formulation is known as the lemon tech. This is mixing lemon juice with dried powdered psilocybin mushrooms and letting it sit for 15 to 20 minutes. The citric acid mimics an enzyme in the body that converts the psilocybin to active psilocin. It is hypothesized that nausea can be prevented or reduced with this approach because the conversion from psilocybin to psilocin may be what causes nausea partly. This approach shortens the time to onset and potentially increases the intensity of the experience altogether. Although there are no recorded overdoses in humans associated with psilocybin consumption, as pharmaceutical companies design and create new dosage formulations and delivery mechanisms, it is of the utmost importance that these products are used as recommended by the manufacturer. Because these new formulations will utilize a psilocybin-inspired analog, it could be possible for some serious health consequences to occur due to improper or misinformed use. With these formulations coming to market, it may be more likely that serious health concerns can occur that may jeopardize your peer or community's safety. We can mitigate these risks through inclusive educational programs, harm and risk reduction training, and professional oversight regarding psilocybin product administration and storage techniques. For general storage instruction, please store all products in a cool, dry area away from direct exposure to humidity, sunlight, and out of reach from any parties that are not intended to handle, administer, or be administered these products. It's also recommended to store and maintain all products in a room temperature environment unless communicated otherwise by the manufacturer. I'll now discuss synthetic dosage formulations. Let's begin with the most common synthetic product, generally referred to as pills, which can be categorized as predominantly tablets or capsules. We commonly see tablets used in psilocybin clinical trials. In many cases, tablets or capsules have a unique release mechanism. It's very important to never crush, break, or chew tablets or capsules unless it is fully clear that it's appropriate to do so per the manufacturer's information. Additionally, tablets or capsules are intended to be swallowed, so please ingest the medication as directed by the company that creates it. Next, we have lozenges. Lozenges are designed to dissolve in the mouth over a set period of time, typically between 15 to 30 minutes. There are rapidly dissolving lozenges known as troches too. It's generally recommended to avoid food or beverages for 15 minutes before and during lozenge use. Another product includes transdermal patches. These are medicated patches applied to the skin to deliver a product. This may theoretically minimize the risk of nausea and vomiting and could allow for more control and customizability in how the arc of the experience goes. Avoid heating these patches, especially when placed on a person's body. Also, unless communicated by the manufacturer otherwise, do not cut the patch. When handling these patches, it's going to be important to follow proper hand hygiene, glove up, and place it on the appropriate location. Try to avoid hairy areas and make sure that the area is well cleaned. Use water to clean the area and let the skin dry off completely before putting the patch on. Injection products are also very possible. Some studies actually use injectable psilocybin or psilocin already. This may bypass the risk of nausea. As a reminder, this is referring to cGMP psilocybin, not mushroom psilocybin. So please do not do this at home with mushroom tea. This actually was tried and led to fungemia and organ failure. Hand hygiene as well is important. And you should also know the type of injection you're providing. Injections can be administered into the muscle, under the skin, or into the vein. These are referred to as IM, SQ, and IV respectively. Additional licensing might be required. Another product we might see in the future could be an inhaler. A majority of absorption would be throughout the lining of the mouth and esophagus versus absorption in the lungs. Proper inhaler technique could impact the amount absorbed. A spacer might be recommended as a device that's used to ensure that all the medicine is inhaled appropriately. Lastly, there are nasal sprays. Nasal sprays allow for rapid absorption into the blood. This may also bypass the risk of nausea unless there's an active postnasal drip that's being swallowed. Nasal sprays may irritate the throat due to this dripping effect. These are all hypothetical dosage formulations that you may see in your communities in the future. All of the information I've shared is general information about realistic possibilities surrounding future psilocybin-inspired pharmaceutical products. Each company will have their own instruction in the future. We've just finished discussing a variety of dosage formulations for both mushroom and cGMP psilocybin. We've highlighted selected formulations, benefits for their potential implementation, storage techniques, and the potential effects these formulations may have. Now let's transition to dose day considerations. In order to effectively reduce the risks of dose day, we must understand what the risks are. There are temporary side effects and potential longer-term side effects associated with psilocybin experiences. In order to mitigate these risks, many clinical trials in ceremonial contexts implement a standard phasic approach to psilocybin care. This is preparation, dose day, and integration. Implementation of preparation and integration surrounding the dose day can drastically reduce the risks of a negative outcome pertaining to a psilocybin experience. Preparation is extremely important. The risk that is reduced through the preparation process is a risk of a challenging, traumatizing, or maladaptive experience. These psychological risks or side effects can be temporary or chronic. Temporary psychological side effects that can be mitigated here may include anxiety, confusion, and paranoia. The longer concerns that can be prevented include hallucinogen persisting perceptual disorder, or HPPD, and maladaptive ontological shock syndrome, or MOS. The preparation phase includes psychological and physical screening, including comprehensive medication review. This is outside the role of peer supporter. So please refer your peer to a psychedelic-friendly clinician for more guidance in navigating this step of screening. Preparation is a shared responsibility for both your peer and yourself. You must both show up. You must both be present. For the peer, it's going to be developing one's intentions for the dose day itself. As a peer supporter, it's important to remind your peer that intentions are much different than expectations. Invite your peer to set intentions, not expectations. This will help reduce the risk of your peer being let down if their dose day did not meet what they had hoped for. It's the responsibility of both parties to build rapport or trust, as described in the clinical trials. Building rapport goes a long way in understanding who you are supporting and why you're supporting them. For the peer, it's important that they are comfortable and trusting who they are gathering information from and who could be supporting their safety during dose day. Setting clear boundaries on touch is crucial to do before the dose day takes place. In clinical trials, session monitors will spend between 6 to 8 hours, sometimes more, with their potential journeyer to build rapport, provide education, define the dose day logistics, and determine psychological readiness, which, unless you are trained to do so, again, please refer that out. In some indigenous communities or ceremonial contexts, the preparation process embraces a very animistic worldview, the attribution of a soul to plants and natural phenomena. There are concepts and themes of death and rebirth experiences, out-of-body journeying, and preparation practices are focused around mental, physical, and spiritual work. Preparation also includes understanding and supporting your peers' set and setting. And an optimized set and setting are very important in reducing the short and long-term risks associated with the dose day. Set refers to the mindset of your peer leading up to their dose day and overlaps with setting intentions. Optimizing your peer's mindset is not your responsibility. It is the work your peer must be aware about doing. As a peer supporter, you may invite your peer to practice mindfulness exercises, journaling, spending time in nature, cleaner eating, balanced hydration, better sleeping habits, and physical exercise on a more consistent routine leading into dose day. This may strengthen one's mindset. Whatever is realistic is welcomed. Please do not show disappointment towards your peers if they do not accept or follow through on your invitation to nurture their mindset. Again, that is their responsibility. As a peer supporter, to better support your peers, focus on nurturing your own mindset. It's important to go into a peer support experience with a clear mind to better support them. Next is setting. Setting refers to the external environment of your peer during the dose day itself. This includes the time of day, the people, the music, and the culture during the experience. In clinical trial settings, a journeyer would find themselves in a clean, comfortable, warmly lit room with 2 medical monitors to support their dose day. The journeyer would be on a cozy couch with a blindfold on, headphones on, listening to non-lyrical music, and being invited to look inward and explore. In the ceremonial context, the settings may vary. In some indigenous approaches, it is a communal experience led by a healer of the community. The group begins with prayer and silence, which is then followed by song. Mushrooms are presented to community members and invited to consume at their own pace. Chanting, dancing, percussion, and release of emotions occur throughout the ceremony. This approach may produce a very cathartic-like experience highly associated with a mystical-like state. For new peers that are not in this ceremonial setting, led by a trained, trusted, and vetted community leader, minimizing as many variables is important, so your peer's phone should be off or on airplane mode, please. Having on hand an emergency contact for your peer and the Fireside Project phone app or numbers saved for your peer is recommended to help you out and to determine whether escalation of care is required. The last segment of preparation that I'd like to discuss is an overview of potential side effects. We've glossed over aspects of different side effects, so a dedicated discussion that overviews this can be helpful in your role. As a peer supporter, it's important to inform and educate your peer, your community, and yourself about what might occur during the dose day and beyond. Let's begin with side effects that may occur during the dose day itself. These are temporary side effects. These side effects include anxiety, nausea, confusion, paranoia, diarrhea, vomiting, and increases in both blood pressure and heart rate. Headache is common after the experience ends and more probable with higher doses. Another risk, though rare, includes serotonin toxicity. So the anxiety and paranoia, that can be reduced with a thorough preparation phase. The risks associated with the increase in blood pressure and heart rate should be discussed and referred out to a clinician for a risk assessment. The nausea can be reduced with earlier examples shared, such as ginger, tea, or being in a fasted state. The diarrhea and vomiting may also be reduced with a fasted state and healthy food habits leading to the dose day. I would like to make a note here that although diarrhea and vomiting in the Western world is largely considered a side effect or an unwanted effect of a medicine, to some communities, this is an intended effect of the medicine and is considered a cleansing process, as vomiting and diarrhea relate to the purging of toxins from the body. Serotonin toxicity, also known as serotonin syndrome, occurs due to an increase of intrasynaptic serotonin transmission, which eventually overactivates the serotonin 2A receptors. Fortunately, psilocybin does not increase the intrasynaptic serotonin transmission, so the risk of psilocybin inducing serotonin toxicity by itself is little to none. If your peer is taking medications or supplements, please refer them to a psychedelic-friendly clinician to determine the risks of psilocybin interacting with their medications or supplements and potentially causing serotonin toxicity. Unfortunately, not all of our peers may be forthcoming about the medications they're taking. In this circumstance where multiple compounds are ingested without your knowledge, it's important to know when to call for help. Although serotonin syndrome is very, very rare, it is also very, very life-threatening. Signs and symptoms of serotonin toxicity include sweating, confusion, tremors, dizziness, muscle contraction, increased body temperature, elevated heart rate, diarrhea, nausea, nervousness, irritability, and dilated pupils. Oh wait, that sounds a lot like a psychedelic experience. Yes, the signs and symptoms of mild serotonin syndrome overlap tremendously with the physical traits of the psilocybin experience and may match the overall timeline of the experience too. The way we can better determine if a peer is experiencing serotonin toxicity would be if they're experiencing strong somatic effects beyond the normal duration of the psychedelic experience, or if there's a presence of clonus. Clonus is characterized by repetitive and often rhythmic convulsions, very similar to the way a clonic seizure may be present. Additionally, please have a thermometer present, as a body temperature of over 40 degrees Celsius or 104 degrees Fahrenheit is another indicator that this may be serotonin toxicity. If your peer is agitated, severely confused, or non-responsive to your engagement, this is also another possibility that they may be experiencing serotonin toxicity. If your peer is highly rigid or stiff, with other accompanying traits mentioned, this too can be a need to call for help and escalate. If you are escalating and calling 911 for emergency support, please be ready to share a timeline of the psilocybin ingestion to better equip our emergency clinicians, and do not excessively restrain your peer physically either. For more risk reduction considerations, please look forward to Isaiah's unit later in this program, as well as David's unit thereafter. So we just covered dose day side effects. Now let's discuss chronic or longer term side effects. These include, again, HPPD and MOS. HPPD, once again, stands for hallucinogen persisting perceptual disorder. There are two types. Type 1 consists of brief flashbacks relating to the psychedelic experience. Type 2 is a visual disturbance where halos, visual snow, and after images may be near constant. The occurrence of HPPD is very rare, and it is cited that thorough preparation and screening may prevent this from occurring. So again, recommend to refer out. MOS, or maladaptive ontological shock syndrome. This is a longer-term effect that may occur due to the lack of preparation, set intentions, and integration surrounding the dose day. This can be characterized with repetitive and frequent journeying as a possible form of escapism and a longing for expansion of perspective and insight derived from the dose day. This can be a touchy subject, navigating both cognitive liberty and your peers' safety. It's important to recognize that although psilocybin is not physiologically addictive, it may be behaviorally attractive. Case in point is Moss. It may be challenging to know when to step in and discuss this concept with your peers. This is where it's important to inform them about the risk of Moss and that the insights being had from the experience can be adaptive if applied to day-to-day living and tied back to earlier intentions. Another potential chronic side effect associated with psilocybin includes valvular heart disease. It is theoretical, but still plausible. We know that the psychedelic experience occurs through the activation of the serotonin 2A receptor. Psilocin also acts on the serotonin 2B receptor. Previous medications have been removed from the market because they acted on the 2B receptor, which caused valvular heart disease, mitral regurgitation, that led to pulmonary hypertension, and then death. This theoretical risk is higher with microdosing, specifically chronic microdosing, with no cycles or days off. We do need more research here on this front to better understand the true risks. For now, it's important that we educate about them. Again, the role of peer support is for information sharing, community risk reduction, and to serve as a tool in preserving your community's well-being. Sharing research-driven risk reduction information in your community to your peers is crucial at minimizing the risks and maximizing the potential benefits of dose days and beyond. These benefits are actively being researched and are correlated to that mystical-like experience. The potential benefits of psilocybin include alleviating symptoms of depression, anxiety, substance use disorders, OCD, PTSD, eating disorders, and more. I mentioned that both preparation and integration are important to reduce the risks of the dose day. Later in this program, you're going to be hearing from Scott about the importance of integration, recommending integration in group settings like an integration workshop or an integration circle can be very valuable for your peer after their dose day. If your peer is more interested in working one-on-one with a specialist for deeper work, a psychedelic integration coach or a psychedelic-friendly therapist might be a better option. As literature continues to express the many potential indications that psilocybin has to offer our communities, let us not forget that we can respectfully gather wisdom and knowledge from many sources and frameworks, from scientific journals to integration circles, from the clean room to the jungle. There's more that we can realize and learn from each other than we may think. I know we went over a lot of information today. I hope it's digesting well. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope that you're enjoying this learning experience. Now, I'd like to hand the screen over to Amy to speak about the arc of the psilocybin experience. Enjoy.